I defy anybody to look upon the Mazda CX-30 and be anything but impressed by its appearance. Seriously, this is the best of both worlds proposition, looking both bigger and chunkier than the Mazda 3, yet more stylish and more sleek than the bigger CX-5. And the best of both worlds thing really should apply to the size as well. Remember, this is a bigger car than the Mazda 2 base CX-3, which really is tiny, and yet it's not so big and cumbersome as the more family-focused CX-5. And that means you should get plenty of style, but plenty of space too. At least that's what it says on the label. The question though is, does it live up to those claims in real life, or will you be paying a practicality price to look this posh? My little urban family and I had the last couple of months to figure it out, so join me as we take a much closer look at the CX-30 G25 Astina. But first, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe to stay on top of all of our latest videos, and to read all my reports on this car and reviews on thousands more, jump on over to the carsguide.com.au website. Before we get to the living with it stuff though, let's take a closer look at what we've actually got here. This is the fanciest of the CX-30s, the G25 Astina, which costs around $41,500 for the front wheel drive I've been living with, or around $43,500 for the all-wheel drive version. It sits above the G20 Pure, Evolve, Touring and Astina, and then the G25 Touring too, but it's just been pipped price-wise by the X20 Astina, which is fitted with Mazda's clever compression ignition Sky Active X engine. The G25 bit, by the way, refers to the engine, while the G20 cars get a 2-litre engine, good for 114 kilowatts and 200 Newton meters. The G25 cars, including ours, get a bigger 2.5-litre petrol unit, delivering a hefty 139 kilowatts and 252 Newton meters. It's partnered with a 6-speed automatic transmission, which in our car drives the front tyres. It will sip a claimed 6.6 litres per 100 kilometres on the combined cycle too. Finally, let's talk safety, because this top shelf Astina gets a lot. Deep breath now. You get 7 airbags, front and rear parking sensors, blind spot monitoring, a 360-degree parking camera, adaptive cruise, a driver attention alert system, forward obstruction warning, front and rear cross traffic alert, AEB with pedestrian and cyclist detection, lane departure warning, lane keep assist, and 2 ISOFIX and 3 top tether points. Now remember, this is a style-driven vehicle, and especially so in this Astina, guys, which means you get plenty of niceties for your money. The boot, for example, is powered, the LED headlights are adaptive, and you get LED DRLs. There's keyless entry, a powered sunroof, and the alloys are 18 inches. And that's just the beginning of the story. It gets even nicer inside. Now this is a premium feeling space. Leather seats arrive as standard. Ours are trimmed in this lovely pure white. There's dual zone climate with rear vents. There's heated front seats, a heated leather wrapped steering wheel, bottle holders in the doors, and hidden cup holders too. Now on the tech front, this 8.8-inch screen gets both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it pairs with a very good Bose stereo. There's digital radio, standard navigation, and USB inputs as well, obviously. Now there's a second screen in front of the driver, as well as a head-up display. I guess the short version is, you really don't want for much in here. So that's the style size of the equation sorted. What about the space? Now I've spent a fair bit of time in some really well-packaged small SUVs lately, and if I'm honest, this really isn't one of them. The CX-30 measures 4,395mm in length, 1,795mm in width, and 1,540mm in height, and it rides on a 2,655mm wheelbase. And space up front is absolutely fine, not a problem at all, but it's rear passenger room and luggage space that can act as a little bit of a downer here. The boot, for example, serves up 317 litres of VDA space. Now compare that with my last long-term vehicle, the Seltos, which served up 433 litres of VDA space. Now here in the back seat, you might find space just a little bit tighter. At 175 centimetres, I'm no giant, and sitting behind my own driving position, you can see I do have some leg room and some headroom, but it does just feel a little bit cramped back here, and I can't imagine going 3 adults across the back seat. I also find the door apertures a little tight too, so much so that it can be tricky to pop Poppy into a little seat, which makes me think if you had child seats, that could be a little tricky too. Now just to step outside the usual review format for a moment, I want to talk you through the service experience for the Mazda CX-30. It's not every day we're called upon to visit a dealership with one of our test cars, and I wanted to give you an idea of just what you can expect. First, it's far faster and less painful than you might imagine. AMR Mazda in Sydney's inner west has recently launched an express service option aimed at people who want to get their car taken care of but don't want to spend any real time off the road. My appointment for my 10,000 kilometre service was booked for just after 7 AM with a promise that I'd be out the door and on the road again by 8 AM, which is pretty impressive. Sure enough, I arrived at the dealership along with plenty of others to be greeted by a team of air traffic controllers directing us into a particular parking area. You're then handed a voucher for a coffee and something light to eat and sent out and up the road to chill out at a cafe. No sooner had I sat down than my phone beeped with a video sent by the dealership of a technician wandering around my CX-30, showing me the brake pad wear, the tyre tread, a closer look at the suspension, and a heap of other stuff too. I'd also reported some clunkiness in the gear shifts, and so a test drive was performed and the Gearbox software recalibrated. 2 outstanding recall actions were also performed, and I was in the car and on the road close enough to an hour later. It really was pretty impressive stuff. For the record, Mazda recommends servicing every 10,000 Ks, and for that first service, the cost is around $320. So let's get the good stuff about the driving experience out of the way first, shall we? And there is really a lot to like about this car. For one, it feels really dynamically sorted. I like the ride, I like the steering, I like the way that you feel connected to the car. It doesn't give you that kind of distant sensation that some SUVs do. You do really feel a part of the car, and I love that. Sure, it's not as floaty comfortable as some really super soft SUVs might be, but for me, that's always been a worthy trade-off. I would rather feel connected to the experience than separate from it. It just feels safer that way, but also more engaging. I also really like the engine. There's plenty of punch on offer here, but it's not super sporty. It just feels like there's a really steady flow of power whenever you need it, and you never find yourself searching for more. All of which is a fairly sizable tick in my book. So in summary, it's smooth, but not too smooth. There's plenty of power on offer, and it feels like an engaging, exciting car to drive. All of which is really good. So there are some quirks though that I've identified over the last couple of months, and they may or may not be deal breakers. They're not for me, but they're certainly worth talking about. The first is the air conditioning. I know it seems like a tiny thing, but as summer hits in Sydney, powerful air conditioning is really important, and I just find the setup here a little substandard. It never really cools the car, nor does it ever really get that cold. It's not something you think about straight away perhaps, but you do notice it on those hot days. The other are these A-pillars here. Now, it doesn't look like they're all that thick and imposing, but they somehow manage to get right in your line of vision when you're about to turn onto an intersection like I am now. And the other quirk I'm sort of still trying to get my head around is the gearbox. Now, when I first got this car, it was a bit clunky and it was a bit uncertain, never really seemed too sure of which gear to go into, especially at lower speeds. Now, I have had this car serviced and they recalibrated the gearbox then, and it has improved things, but I still just find it just a little jerky at times. It doesn't have that kind of seamless flow that we've come to expect of a modern car. It can just feel a bit glitchy in places. Now, again, for me, that's not a deal breaker. It's certainly improved immeasurably since the recalibration, but just something to perhaps watch out for if you're test driving it. They are all quibbles rather than deal breakers though, and I've found my months with this car really enjoyable behind the wheel. I'm pretty sure you will too. So there you have it, the Mazda CX-30 G25 Astina. The short answer, you get plenty of style, but you do make some space sacrifices too. So if yours is a bigger family, you might be better off shopping for something just a little bit bigger. However, if your family looks a little like ours, you'll find there's plenty of room in here. It's a nice driving car, there's plenty of equipment, and it feels eminently posh throughout. Now remember, you need to subscribe to stay on top of all of our latest videos, and for all of your car questions, carsguide.com.au has the answers.